Back in high school, I had this really good friend, let's call him Mark. We grew up together, and he lived next door to a house that was just weird. It felt like it was constantly for sale. Seriously, a new family would move in, and then poof, a few months later, they'd be gone. Most of the time, they'd just pack up and leave in the middle of the night. No goodbyes, no nothing. For a couple of years straight, that house never had the same owner for more than 6 months. It became the neighborhood mystery, the place everyone whispered about. One night, it was one of those unbearably boring weeknights where you feel like you, do anything for a bit of excitement. Mark and I were just hanging out, and he looks over at the dark, empty house next door. It had been vacant for a few weeks by then, just sitting there silently. He gets this little glint in his eye and says, "Hey, we should go explore." Now, normally I'd be the voice of reason, but the boredom was real. So, against my better judgment, I said yes. We crept over, our sneakers making soft sounds on the pavement. The front door was locked, obviously. We made our way around to the back, hiding in the shadows cast by the overgrown bushes. And there it was, our way in. A small doggy door on the back porch. Mark was skinny enough to squeeze through. I waited, my heart starting to thump a little faster, listening to him fumbling around inside. A few moments later, I heard the click of the lock on the back door, and he swung it open, letting me in with a triumphant grin. The inside of the house was, well, pretty unremarkable at first. It had that distinct old house smell, a mix of dust and faint, forgotten memories. You could tell it was built a while back, probably in the 1950s. It was a craftsman-style house, the kind you see in the older, nicer parts of town where the trees are huge and the lots are big. Mark's house was built in a similar style, so it felt strangely familiar, yet completely alien at the same time. The electricity was off, so the only light came from the moon and the single, lonely streetlight out front, casting long, distorted shadows across the rooms. We wandered through the downstairs area, our footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. The living room was empty, the dining room was bare, but the kitchen had this really cool built-in breakfast nook. It was a wooden bench and table set right up against a huge picture window that looked out onto the front yard. Even in the dark, you could tell it would have been a really nice, sunny spot to have your morning coffee. For some reason, instead of exploring the rest of the house, we decided to just hang out in the kitchen. I guess we felt safest there, with the streetlight visible through the window. We didn't sit at the table, though. We just plopped down on the floor, sitting across from the breakfast nook, leaning against the opposite wall. We were just talking, about high school stuff, classes, girls, whatever. Just two bored teenagers killing time in a place they definitely shouldn't have been. We were deep in conversation, and I was in the middle of telling some stupid story. And then it happened. All of a sudden, without any warning, Mark let out this blood-curdling scream. It wasn't a joke scream. It was pure, absolute terror. In that exact instant, my entire world went black. But it wasn't just that I couldn't see. It wasn't like closing your eyes or being in a dark room. This was a physical, consuming blackness. It felt like I'd been plunged into an abyss, and with the blackness came this cold. An unnatural, sickly cold that seeped into my bones. It started at my toes and shot up through my entire body. An icy wave of dread that was so intense, it felt like it was physically crushing me. I couldn't move, I couldn't think. I was just engulfed in this cold, empty void. Pure panic set in, and I started screaming too. I was just screaming into nothingness. Then I felt Mark's hand grab mine. It was a desperate, forceful grip. He started pulling me, dragging me with all his might. I was stumbling blindly, still trapped in that suffocating darkness, the cold still clinging to me like a wet blanket. Slowly, so slowly, my vision started to return. It came back in patches, like a fuzzy TV screen trying to find a signal. The blackness receded, and the chilling cold began to fade. The next thing I knew, we were outside, standing directly under the yellow glow of the streetlight. I was gasping for air, my body trembling. I realized we were back on the sidewalk, out in the open. The strangest part? It was December. It was cold outside, sure, but the warmth I felt returning to my body was immense. It should have been much, much warmer inside that house than it was out on the street. But the cold I felt in there was nothing like winter air. It was something else entirely. I finally managed to look over at Mark. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a fear I had never seen on him before. He looked absolutely petrified. I was still so confused, my own panic mixing with a million questions. My voice was shaky when I finally asked him, What happened? What was that? He was breathing heavily, trying to catch his breath. He pointed a trembling finger back at the dark house. He said that while I was talking, he saw something crawl out from underneath the breakfast table. He described it as a black thing. A figure that was completely black, like a hole in the space around it, but it had the vague shape of a little girl. He said it moved silently, and before he could even process what he was seeing, it sat right on top of me. According to him, the moment it touched me, I just went silent mid-sentence. My eyes were wide open, but I was just groping the air in front of me like I was suddenly blind and trying to find my way. He said it was the most terrifying thing he'd ever witnessed. He screamed, and when I started screaming, he knew he had to get me out of there. That's when he grabbed my arm and dragged me out of the house as fast as he could. We're still good friends to this day, and every now and then we bring it up. The story never changes. Every detail remains exactly the same in both of our memories. And every time we talk about it, it still sends a shiver down my spine. Thinking back on it now, I can still feel that coldness. It was palpable, almost sticky. A darkness that wasn't just the absence of light, but a presence all on its own. For days after that night, I couldn't shake this deep, unsettling feeling. It was like a shadow was following me, just out of the corner of my eye. I could never walk past that house again. I'd cross the street or take a completely different route just to avoid it. To this day, I have never experienced anything like that blackness or that profound, soul-deep cold. It was a feeling I hope I never have to experience again. Just telling this story makes me scared to get out of bed now. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. Stay safe out there.